Hey, how's it going? Wes here. Welcome back to another lesson. In today's lesson, we have another blue vocabulary lesson and we have a new topic. The topic of this new vocabulary lesson is the cafe. In our previous vocabulary lessons, we already took a look at the restaurant and food and drinks. And so I want to finish that with this one called the cafe. And as always, this vocabulary topic is also divided into multiple parts. For this topic, the cafe, we have 3 different parts. So in today's video, in today's lesson, we will start with the first part. Alright, so without further ado, let's get into it. Blue vocabulary lesson, the cafe, part 1 of 3. Alright, so we have already went over some of the most popular foods and drinks in Spanish. We already know how to order things in a restaurant or how to make a reservation. And so in this lesson, I'm not going to go over that all again, but there are some other things that I would like to go over with you. So without further ado, let's get into our first word. All right, so the first word or phrase is
para comer. Para comer.
And this means to eat. So for example, if you go to a cafe, you might not always go there to eat something. So the waiter might ask you, do you want to eat or do you want to drink? And if you want to say to eat, then you can say
para comer.
And so then the waiter understands that you also want to eat something and they will likely bring you a menu or something. So to eat,
para comer.
And then to drink is
para beber. Para beber.
So for example, if you go to a cafe and you only want to drink something, then you can say
solo para beber. Solo para beber.
Which then obviously means that you only want to drink something. Alright, so then the next word, and I think we've already seen this word actually, el desayuno. El desayuno, which is the breakfast.
El desayuno. El desayuno.
I wanted to include this word anyways because a little repetition never hurts, and of course it's important to know what the main meals in Spanish are. So el desayuno, the breakfast, is something that you can have in a cafe. Now next to the breakfast, we also of course have the lunch, and we already learned this word also.
El almuerzo. El almuerzo.
And of course you can also have la merienda, which meant the snack or the afternoon snack.
La merienda. La merienda.
Now I've not included la cena, which meant the dinner, because in a cafe you don't really have dinner, so I left that out. What I did include was the food or la comida.
La comida. La comida.
Alright, so that was a bit of repetition from the previous lessons. Now let's move on to some new words. Now if you go to a cafe, sometimes what you order, you might want to take that with you. So you don't want to eat it at the cafe itself. And in Spanish, we of course also have words or phrases to describe that we want to take something away or that we want to eat it at the cafe. Let's start with the way of saying that we want to eat it at the place itself, which is
para aquí. Para aquí.
Which means to have here, or literally translated, for here. So to eat at the place itself. And then when you want to say to take away, you say
para llevar. Para llevar.
And sometimes when you order something, you might hear them say para aquí o para llevar.
Para aquí o para llevar. Para aquí o para llevar.
Which means to have here or to take away. And then you can say to have here or to eat here or to take away.
Para aquí. Para llevar.
Alright, let's move on to the next word, which is actually a pretty easy word, which I'm also sure that we have already went over, which is the tea. The tea is el té.
El té. El té.
And another way in which tea is being described sometimes on menus is la infusión.
La infusión. La infusión.
Which is also the tea, but it means more like an infused tea. So, el té, la infusión. The tea or the infusion. And then of course we also have the coffee, which is el café.
El café. El café.
And when we talk about coffee, of course, there's a lot of different types of coffee. Now, I'm not a really big coffee drinker myself, to be honest, but I did some research for you and I found some of the most popular types of coffee that you can ask for. So I'll go over those now, and then in the description or the translation in English, you will see kind of the type of coffee that it is. But I highly recommend you to look online or go to Google and typing in these different types of coffee so that you understand the differences as well. Because as I said, I'm not personally a big coffee drinker. And if you're very picky about your coffee, it's probably best to do your own research on this. But these are just the most popular types of coffee that you can order.
Café solo. Café americano. Café cortado. Café negro. Café con leche. Café con hielo.
And then some people also like to put milk in their coffee. And of course, there's different types of milk. So let's also have a look at the most popular types of milk that you can ask for when ordering a coffee with milk.
Leche de vaca. Leche de avena. Leche vegetal. Leche de soja.
Alright, and that's actually already it for this first part of this 3-part vocabulary lesson called the café. Now, I wanted to keep this short because I know that there's so many things to learn: vocabulary, grammar, verbs. So I'm just gonna leave this first part here, and then in a couple of lessons from now, we will pick up with the second part of the café. For now, as always, you can download the PDF file of today's lesson, which has all of the words and phrases that we learned in today's lesson in a nice single PDF file. And other than that, that's it for this lesson. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you got something out of this. I know that we went over some words that we already learned, but it's always good to have some repetition. Alright, that's it for this lesson. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Adios.